Hello, my name is Gretta of the family Fahey. The reason I call myself of the family is because by doing so it offers me protection from man-made law, some of which is now unjust. I live about 7 miles west of a small town in the west of Ireland called Claremorris. We all have been lied to on an unimaginable scale. The reason we are being lied to by a secret cabal of dark Luciferians and others is because a differential in knowledge leads to a differential in power, and also because people who are uninformed are very easy to manipulate, and also because the people who have enormous power behind the scenes in our world wish to keep it, and they don't wish us to ever have it. They don't wish us to ever be able to usurp them. One of the things they have lied to you about is the existence and abuse of directed energy weapons and voice harassment technology. There are many people throughout Ireland and the wider world who are being harassed and psychologically tortured in their own homes with directed energy weapons and voice harassment technology. I have been psychologically harassed and tortured in my own home in the distant past by these weapons, and it led to me making 2 serious suicide attempts where I was unconscious in Castlebar Regional Hospital. It used to be called the General Hospital once, County Mayo, Ireland, for 4 days after each suicide attempt, which was an overdose. 4 days each time. So these weapons are extremely dangerous and they are going under the radar. Over the years, the voices which I heard coming from inside my head gave me lots of information, and I wrote it down, and I already published it on another YouTube video, and it's also published on my website, which is called targetedindividualsireland.net. However, I didn't publish it all on my other YouTube video, so this is part 2 of a YouTube video where I am reading out messages the voices coming from inside my head informed me of over a number of years, 14 years actually, when I was hearing these voices on and off. I will read them out to you now. Okay. The voices coming from inside my head told me they were planning to paralyze me at some time in the future, but would leave me with the ability to feel pain. They would then torture me endlessly by wireless means, but I would be unable to communicate the situation to anybody. Now, when I say wireless, I mean long-range Wi-Fi. I'm really not sure. I'm not a scientist. The voices say it's long-range Wi-Fi, so I'm going to go with that. So they would then torture me endlessly by long-range Wi-Fi means, but I would be unable to communicate the situation to anybody. These voices coming from inside my head told me that they would, at some time in the future, they would cut the synapses in my body with their energy weapons, and I would never, ever be able to move a muscle ever again. Then they told me that they would torture me endlessly, but I would not be able to tell anybody about my torture as I would be totally paralyzed. Because of this psychological torture, I have lived for many years in a living hell of terror. The voices coming from inside my head talked to me on and off for several years. They told me I had been put on a program where my whole life would be analysed and I would be experimented on remotely. During this time, they asked me hundreds of questions. The following are just a small sample of the questions I'm not sure if I read this out on my other video. There's just a few questions here. Have you ever stolen any money, even a small amount? Have you ever had a row with anyone on an internet forum? What percentage of your income do you contribute to charity? Do you do any voluntary work in your community? Do you belong to an organized religion? Now, they're the questions they will ask you if you start to hear voices and you are put on one of these programs. They are the questions they will ask you initially in order to build a basic profile of you. They will ask you more in-depth questions at a later date. They see it as surveying, and they said that they have empowered themselves to survey a selection of people in every country throughout the world, so that knowledge is power, and they obtain an awful lot of knowledge by surveying selected people inside their own homes in every country throughout the world almost. I'm not sure if every country is done, but all NATO countries are certainly being surveyed. If I did not answer the voices respectfully, they would accuse me of showing hostility towards their staff. These voices coming from inside my head once told me that they had located a man who was willing to accuse me of breaking some law, provided they pay him a large sum of money. I asked what he would accuse me of, as I hadn't done anything wrong. They replied, "He is going to accuse you of anything we ask him to accuse you of." On a number of occasions, the voices coming from inside my head begged me to commit suicide, because they claimed to feel sorry for me because of the torture that would be inflicted on me at some future date if I did not commit suicide immediately. Oftentimes, the voices coming from inside my head would wake me up in the middle of the night to ask me questions and to offer suggestions about how I might improve my life. Some of these voices made disparaging remarks about me and threatened me constantly. They described how they might cut off my head or drown me in the cattle slurry tank in the farm where I live. At other times, they described how they might hang me or bury me alive. They also claimed they would burn down my home. Initially, I would become deeply upset. Eventually, after hundreds and hundreds of death threats and other abuse, I got so used to their threatening tactics, their threats would roll off me like water off a duck's back. These voices coming from inside my head once told me exactly what percentage of my time I had spent in bed over a 5-year period. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that they would abduct me from my home, and then they would cut off my hands and my heels so that I would never be able to escape them. These messages can be perceived as extreme psychological torture if they are transmitted to anybody who is totally unaware of the existence and abuse of directed energy weapons and voice-to-skull military communication technology, also called voice harassment technology. And I wasn't aware of it when it first started happening to me. I was horrified. If a targeted individual ever wishes to pray, they will be answered by the voices coming from inside their heads. These self-proclaimed elite criminals wish to totally destroy the inner landscape of the human being so that we become totally outer-directed. The voices coming from inside my head told me that I had been chosen as the Irish candidate for electrostatic submersion. I don't know what that means. High-intensity focused ultrasound is similar to using a magnifying glass to focus sunlight. An individual can be made to feel pressure on their body by the use of focused ultrasound, even when you're at home. Inside your own home, in bed, you can be made to feel pressure in your body. Focused ultrasound can also be used to make you feel a slight phantom sensation on your body. By the further application of haptic technology, focused ultrasound can be used to make you feel as if a phantom, hand-shaped sensation is holding your hand or arm. I know this is true because I experienced it often when I was being harassed by directed energy weapons in the distant past. All of the psychological torture exercises which have been used against me over the years boil down to two basic themes, one of which is the threat of total body paralysis at some time in the future, and the other threat is one where they threaten to robotize the body of the targeted individual at some time in the future. When you're really, really frightened, you don't know what to believe. You're inclined to believe they have capabilities that they may not have at all. The reason I have highlighted the last sentence is because of these threats. These are the reasons that caused me to try to kill myself on two occasions in the distant past. Psychological torture is very effective. I am trying to save other targeted individuals from suicide by stressing that this is merely a standard threat that is used on all targeted individuals. Using a pulse-modulated microwave beam carrying an ELF signature which is identical to the one in the motor neuron center of the brain. Motor neuron preparatory sets for various voluntary movements can be encoded on microwave beams and directed at the targeted individual. In this way, various sets of muscles can be induced to move and jerk against the will of the targeted individual. That really frightened me at the beginning. My muscles were moving and jerking against my will. You can achieve this very same effect yourself by holding a transcranial magnetic stimulator to the motor cortex of your own brain, while getting an assistant to deliver a magnetic pulse to the motor cortex. This will make various muscles in your body move and jump totally against your will. I had no knowledge of this phenomenon, so when it was done to me by remote-controlled technology, it frightened me into believing that I was slowly being robotized. Firstly, one of my fingers would move and jerk against my will. Then my wrist began to jerk against my will, followed by my elbow, followed by my feet and legs. Various muscles in the trunk of my body later began to jerk against my will. After several years of this occasional involuntary muscle jerking, both my arms began to jerk in unison with each other. Both my wrists would jerk in unison with each other. Both my knees would jerk in unison with each other. The thumb of my right hand could move slowly of its own accord, an inch at a time. Humanity now has metallic nanoparticles throughout their bodies, which we have both inhaled from chemtrail aerosol spraying and ingested through eating processed foods. These nanoparticles are being used in conjunction with directed energy weapons to manipulate our bodies in ways that were previously unachievable by scientific means at any time in the past. The voices coming from inside my head once told me in the distant past that the field of study needed to solve the problem of directed energy weapons targeting is primarily in the area of the human energy field and secondary in the area of electronic medicine. Sometimes the voices were extremely hostile and insulting to me, but other times they gave me valuable information. Because I don't know why, but they did. I don't know if all of it is true, but I'll read it out anyway. Okay. I also received the advice through this to these voices coming from inside my head to spread the word about the ill-advisability of allowing children to watch a television transmission called Sonic the Hedgehog. This transmission has built-in methodology to induce children into a trance-like situation where they can no longer comprehend right from wrong. Okay. The signals intelligence operatives once told me via voices coming from inside my head that there is a branch of science known as military science. It is funded by deep black budgets. It is only available to the top brass of military intelligence. Another nugget of information I received from these individuals who are arch criminals, but I call them different names, is that a certain subsection of the people who used to target me, known as the neuro-operatives, are slaves by proxy. They are American government employees who have taken out extensive bank loans in order to gain their academic credentials. If they don't pay back these extensive bank loans within a certain number of years, they would be incarcerated. The would-be control structure have a policy of never allowing anyone to redeem their loans without first giving assistance to the would-be control structure for a number of years after they leave college. This is the methodology they have used to manage to force their student-level employees to do this type of unnecessary surveillance on innocent members of the Irish public and the general public of many other European countries and the wider world. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that, as part of the in-home surveillance program which I was put under, my home was invaded 54 times by a network of organised criminals working under the jurisdiction of the mainstream Luciferian establishment. No warrant was obtained to carry out these in-home investigations. During these investigations, small acts of sabotage were carried out each and every time. Certain vibrational frequencies around the head of the human subject allow neuroscientists to observe what goes on inside the head of the subject. As long as, you have to take tracers in processed food as well to enable some of this research. The most effective vibrational frequencies that assist the neuroscientist in this observational capacity are created when the subject is very relaxed or when the subject is engrossed in their computer or smartphone. On one occasion in the distant past, at a time when I was very relaxed and the correct vibrational frequencies were being generated by my relaxed state, a neuroscientist claimed to me to have been observing the activities inside my brain with the help of these frequencies. All of a sudden, I picked up a nearby analog radio and I switched the station to medium wave and I placed the analog radio near the base of my brain. This act completely changed the vibrational frequency near my brainstem. The neuroscientist who was projecting his voice into my brain then claimed that he could no longer conduct any more observational research on my brainstem at that optimum moment because the vibrational frequency was no longer the correct one that would enable observation of the brainstem. On some occasions, the voices coming from inside my head were more aggressive and hostile than at other times. The advanced technology that was used on me over a period of many years by military intelligence personnel was supplied to the military directly by the Irish government. I don't think I believe that, but I'm just reading it out because it was said to me once, but they lied to me all the time. The Irish government's policy is to purchase any new advanced military surveillance technology that comes on the European market in order to be able to surveil Irish society to a forensic level, if deemed necessary. The technology is meant to be used on all members of Irish society if they should fall out of line with government thinking. Personnel within the European Union make the decision with regard to what type of and how much technology they wish to purchase. I don't know if that's true at all, because they often tell me things and that I'm not sure if they're true. One alarming transmission that came through from the voices was the following transmission, which came through late one Tuesday night, which said, "This woman is not the candidate we had hoped for. We wished for a level of ambiguity when showcasing the finished product, which would be a fully solidified human being. All the other candidates are taken." The voices coming from inside my head once told me that multiple personality disorder and demonic possession are phenomena that are created in a laboratory setting by the use of advanced technology, which has been used for multi-generations by the Luciferian and Satanic organizations against humanity. Many so-called mental illnesses are deliberately generated by people by the use of electromagnetic weapons. However, these same voices assured me that epilepsy is a genuine brain disorder. The voices coming from inside my head once told me in the distant past that the neuroscientists stimulate the verbal centers in the brain of nearly all targeted individuals, thereby ensuring that targeted individuals will repeat their thoughts out loud rather than thinking their thoughts privately inside their heads as people normally do. Yeah, a lot of targeted individuals are being forced to repeat their thoughts out loud. They're being, because a certain part of their brain is being overstimulated deliberately in order to make them talk to themselves out loud constantly. They claim to carry out this practice so that neuroscientists can analyze voice modulation for future reference. The neuroscientists also stimulate the motor cortex of the brain of the targeted individual in order to make the targeted individual fall over at inappropriate times. If you hear somebody seemingly talking out loud to themselves, a targeted individual, please don't automatically judge them to be mentally ill, because the part of their brain that involves thinking is deliberately being overstimulated by remote control, forcing them to speak their thoughts out loud. Most targeted individuals wear mobile phone attachments called headsets in order to disguise the fact that they are de facto talking to themselves. The voices coming from inside my head told me that the pattern recognition aspect of the brain research which they carried out on my brain had showed astonishingly accurate results. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that as soon as a targeted individual has their brain and body fully mapped by the neuro-operatives, they then begin to program the targeted individual for various jobs throughout the world. In order to program a targeted individual successfully, the targeted individual must have access to their own high-definition television. In order to successfully facilitate brain compartmentalization. I don't own a television. As soon as, and I never watch one. As soon as a targeted individual is fully brain and body mapped and brain compartmentalized, they will be sent to a remote location where they will meet a handler and he will award them a new name. They will be programmed to love their servitude. They will not wish to return home. The only known way to override this unique set of circumstances is by refusing to own a passport and refusing to ever travel overseas. Yeah. The self-proclaimed elite, that's what I call the secret cabal of dark Luciferians who are trying to take over the planet. The self-proclaimed elite wish to set up an obedience system for society where 2/3 of each population would be monitored by the other 1/3 via signals intelligence by the use of directed energy weapons and with the help of artificial intelligence. On one occasion, I insulted one of the voices coming from inside my head because she nagged me about some household chore. This is commonplace. This is what they do all day long. They seem to be able to see what you're doing and ask you questions like, have you done the dishes yet? And have you swept the floor yet? All of this. And all day long they nag you. I insulted her. She replied, you must never speak to your supervisor like that again. The voices coming from inside my head began to insist that I call them my supervisors, but I never complied with that demand. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that there were 2 domains in every European country, an open domain and a closed domain. The open domain consists of all public government-funded staff. The closed domain consists of a private group of usurpers who have set up a private would-be control system behind the scenes in our lives. Every day, the closed domain sets about usurping the open domain by sabotaging and intimidating and mind control. They also usurp the open domain by the use of directed energy weapons to create havoc in all possible ways, including inducing illnesses and even death among the open domain staff. And also, they have made some unjust laws. Well, they influenced the open domain staff to make some unjust laws by the use of brain entrainment or something. Targeting of individuals is never taken out into the open domain. It is strictly controlled by the closed domain. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that they know of no Irish politician who has their feet in both domains. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that programmers are paid to program microsensors into subsections of what these programmers are told are fabricated people, also called weapon search dummies, when in fact these programmers are unknowingly programming sensors into the cells of real human beings via directed energy weapons. I don't know if this is true. It may have been told to me in order to spread fear. However, I have felt very strange sensations deep inside my muscles, along with the involuntary muscle movement. Very, very frightening. One voice coming from inside my head remarked that he usually conducts his research on people who are bedridden, as they are subdued and easier to conduct research on than this woman. I assumed he was talking about me. Another piece of information I gleaned from the voices coming from inside my head in the distant past was that the neuroscientists conducting this illegal remote-controlled research are planning to create a so-called new mental illness, which they plan to call scientific imaginings, and they plan to list it on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illnesses, commonly known as the DSM, in order to cover their crimes of in-home surveillance and electronic torture, and putting many people throughout the world on computer-enhanced human guidance systems, where these victims are monitored and heavily controlled throughout the day and night. I was once informed by the voices coming from inside my head that if I did not obey them, my body would be slowly solidified over time by the aid of directed energy weapons. I would be encased inside my solidified body while I was still alive, and they would not be able to undo the solidification. I would then be slowly showcased to humanity as an example of what would happen to people if people disobeyed the self-proclaimed elite. I told them that I was mentally prepared for the slow encasement, and I was never going to obey organized criminals with advanced technology. The voices coming from inside my head told me that an artificial intelligence guidance system is due to be put in place in 4 years. This will involve wirelessly attaching miscreants to a supercomputer by their unique brain signature. It's not just adequate to get their brain signature, which takes about 5 minutes to get by standing behind somebody with a special device. You also need their DNA. You also need a sample of their DNA in order to attach them wirelessly. That is my belief. This will involve wirelessly attaching miscreants to a supercomputer by their unique brain signature. These people will be guided as to how best to live their lives on a minute-by-minute basis throughout each day by an artificial intelligence guidance system. If they do not comply with the recommendations of the artificial intelligence guidance system, they will be rendered rigidly immobile. This will be achieved by means of Wi-Fi through their brainstem and from a distance. They will remain immobilized until they die. Oh yeah. They also communicated that the only way that we could save ourselves at this stage is to disband our current control structure They keep stressing that point. When I first heard voices coming from inside my head, they were quite loud and as clear as having a conversation over a telephone. I could clearly discern the accents of the people I was communicating with. I believed this type of communication was called microwave hearing, is called microwave hearing. After many years of this, the wireless voice-to-skull direct communications were transmitted to me in a way that slowly and gradually became quieter and quieter. It is being claimed that eventually the neuroscientists hope to create a situation where a person would not be able to tell the difference between the wireless voice-to-skull direct communications and their own internal voice and their own internal thoughts. This is not achievable in my opinion. It is not the case with me, and I believe it could never be the case with me because I rarely agreed with anything the voices coming from inside my head ever told me. However, if a very young child began to hear Wi-Fi generated voices that were so low, that were very, very low, they might confuse them with their own thinking process. We can easily dismantle the system by taking down all the telephone masts and going back to the use of landline telephones, which I have done myself. And if you are thinking of going back to using a landline telephone, get a very, very old model handset phone, which I have done. Because if you get the newer models, they might have built-in technology in them that's undesirable for us. Okay. The voices coming from inside my head once told me that a methodology which could possibly be used to engender feelings of suicide in a targeted individual would be to direct two pathways of voices directly into the head of the targeted individual, both at the same time. Both pathways of voices could be left on indefinitely, which would be torturous to the targeted individual, and it would render the targeted individual unable to function in society. The voices coming from inside my head told me that they didn't have to try this method of forced suicide. However, they went on to claim that they have tried many more effective methods of forced suicide, including sending pain signals to the targeted individual if and when necessary. They can't really send pain signals at the moment, except, well, actually they can send occasional pain signals if you're being targeted for a long time and if there's a lot of technology in your home. However, if fifth generation wireless technology is ever allowed to go ahead, they will easily be able to send pain signals, because fifth generation wireless technology there is a weapon called the active denial system. Okay, I've forgotten the details of it, so I won't go there. Okay. Now, some people who hear voices and feel electronic harassment say these voices could not be coming from ground-based technology because I hear the voices while I'm on airplanes. However, that can be explained away by the use of horizontal drift plasma antennae, which is a phenomenon created by chemtrail aerosol spraying, and these antennae are used to direct and redirect signals. Chemtrails contain nanobots which can get direct access to the brain and nervous system in humans. So, we've got to stop chemtrail aerosol spraying in our countries, and there's an easy way to do that. We should go to all airports and we should inspect the fuselage for aerosol spray, and we should disallow it from leaving the airport if there's any aerosol spray in the fuselage, because that's being used to enslave humanity, and it has to be stopped. Yeah, we must dismantle all cell phone masts because they generate microwave radiation, which is necessary to carry signals to and from the human brain and also to direct the signals. We must stop chemtrail aerosol spraying, which creates horizontal drift plasma antennae, which are used to direct and redirect the signals. We must stop using smart engineered technology because it is being used to entrain the brains of humanity into a state of happy apathy and inertia and religious fervour when they're in church. In some American churches, that hasn't come into Europe yet. Also, when I say smart engineered technology, I'm also talking about street lighting in some cases. In some cases, new street lighting has smart engineered technology built into it, which can entrain the brains of a whole town or a whole city into a state of happy apathy or in a state of agitation or aggression, or they would entrain the brains of a certain part of town into a state of aggression if they wished to introduce new laws that cause trouble, and then people would call for new laws and they would bring new laws. They would introduce new laws in that way. The government should allow that all suspected targeted individuals must be interviewed in a situation where they are safeguarded from claims of presumed mental illness. Because currently, if we say we are hearing voices, we are incarcerated in mental hospitals, we are stigmatized, and we are given concoctions posing as antipsychotic medication. But they are in fact psychotic-inducing formulas, and they induce agitation as well, and they can torture you from the inside out. They make you feel so bad. One of the voices coming from inside my head advised me to quit complaining about long-term voice harassment via Wi-Fi, which is coming from cell phone towers, also known as mobile phone masts, via the poles outside your home. And hand yourself over to the local police if you have committed a crime, because that is the real reason why you are being subjected to this voice harassment and psychological abuse for a long number of years. I replied that I have not committed a crime. If I had committed a crime, there is a system in place throughout Ireland which deals with such things. The voices coming from directly inside my head also informed me that they had checked the utility poles directly outside my home, and they confirmed that these utility poles had long-range Wi-Fi products attached to them, which is a unique installation, and they are not as yet found outside the homes of other people in Ireland. Okay, space-based weapons do not exist. They cannot exist because air and space cannot coexist side by side. Air and space cannot coexist side by side. There is no space. There is no space. Space-based weapons do not exist. They are a lie that was generated in order for the planetary-wide takeover of the dark Luciferian cabal. If you think air and space can exist side by side, please do so in a laboratory setting. Please show us how it can happen in a laboratory setting. Thank you. Okay. The voice is coming from inside my head told me that if I did not agree to become their slave, they would enable their technology to eventually tie down all of the neurons in my brain to a degree that I would be then locked inside my body without ever being able to move a muscle again. I refuse to become a slave. The voices coming from inside my head informed me that ultrasound messages are being constantly sent into the brains of the military and the armed police in all Western societies. The military and the armed police are unable to consciously hear these messages. This capability of sending undetectable messages directly into people's brains is being enabled by smart engineered technology, which is built into the communication devices that the military and the armed police are legally obliged to wear on their person during working hours. The voices coming from inside my head once informed me in the past that there is no such thing as a free market economy. The price of every product under the sun is deliberately calculated by computer logarithms, and codes are assigned to each logarithm so that the powers that be will know how to cost each product at a later date. This has been going on for more than 20 years throughout Ireland and the wider world, totally unknown to the majority of humanity. I know nothing about markets or finance. I know absolutely nothing about it. And I heard this message while I was cycling along in my bicycle along a back road, and I have no mobile phone and I had no digital phenomena on my bicycle, or no speedometer, digital speedometer or anything, no mobile phone or anything. And I heard this message, and I know nothing about finance. So how can you explain that? On one occasion in the past, the voices coming from inside my head were heard to say by me the following: I can see Gretta Fahey's body in 3D. I don't know whether they can see my body in 3D or not, but I just heard them say that. Because if they brain map you and body map you, they'll eventually be able to see you on their screens. And they do that by sending pulses of energy to you. And then they record the sensations you feel so that they can gain a map of your whole body. Even inside your body, maybe. On a completely separate occasion, I also heard from the voices coming from inside my head the following: people at conference tables throughout the world are horrified that this type of information is going out to the public before it is censored formally. On one occasion in the past, voices coming from inside my head informed me that they heard their employers say to each other the following: we have a serious amount of money invested in the medical experimentation of Gretta Fahey, and it seems like we have to abandon it because of over-publicity both in Ireland and further afield. Hundreds of thousands of people throughout the known world have committed suicide because directed energy weapons and voice harassment technology remains hidden from humanity. It is high time this extremely advanced technology was brought out into the open for public scrutiny and then destroyed forever. On one occasion in the past, the voices coming from inside my head informed me that I would need to physically present myself in a more fashionable way in order to work with them, and that if I wasn't cooperative, they would put me down into a pit of fire. I replied that I would prefer to go down into a pit of fire than to ever cooperate with them because I regarded them as arch criminals. They then replied that the pit of fire they had in mind was a virtual pit of fire rather than an actual one. A virtual pit of fire does no damage to the human body, so the pain and sensations could possibly last a lifetime. I asked the voices if this virtual feat was actually possible at this point in time. They replied that it was not possible now, but they hoped that one day they might achieve this virtual reality. I am writing this so that people will urgently find a way of jamming or shielding themselves from these directed energy weapons. And there is an easy way of jamming. According to a retired British physicist called Barry Trower, he said there's a very easy way of jamming these signals from your home, but if you jam them, the authorities will come around immediately and say you're interfering with the government wave bands. On several occasions in the distant past, violent surges of electricity swirled up and down my body and also up and down my arms and legs. When I first began to be targeted with directed energy weapons, the swirling of electricity that I felt each day was minimal. I would feel swirling electricity going up and down one of my fingers on one day, followed by swirling around my wrist another day. However, as the years went by, the surges of electricity became stronger and stronger until such a time came when I could feel surges of electricity going through my whole body or through my whole head at the same time. On some occasions, I would be lying in bed at night and the surging of electricity through my whole body was so forceful that my whole body would move constantly with the surging, but the movements would be very slight. I decided to switch off my electricity supply at the main switch every night because I now know without a shadow of a doubt, that it is essential that the directed energy weapons testers need an electricity supply in order to conduct their weapons testing. I later began to get little tremors in my head whenever I heard a very loud noise. These tremors are scientifically known as petit mals. If for any reason you become a targeted individual and you cannot switch off your electricity supply at the main supply each night because other people in your household may need it, it may be possible for you to switch off the electricity going to your own bedroom only if there is a switchboard near the main electricity supply in your home. A male voice coming from inside my head once informed me that if he ever saw me out in public and at any time in the future, he would chain me to a rail and set me on fire. I got used to these death threats over the years, and now I don't pay any attention to them at all. But they're extremely frightening at the beginning. But it's better if other targeted individuals know what to expect, so that they won't be frightened and they won't try to kill themselves. The voices coming from inside my head once informed me in the past that the levels of oxygen in my body at any given time affects their ability to manipulate the nanotechnology which had by then proliferated through my bloodstream. They went on to say that drinking ozonated water or adding droplets of hydrogen peroxide to my drinking water, food-grade hydrogen peroxide, enhanced the levels of oxygen in my body, which in turn made their work much easier. I immediately ceased drinking ozonated water and adding hydrogen peroxide to my drinking water, both of which I'd been using in the past for health reasons. The voices informed me that biomedical implants which had been implanted in the soles of my feet in 2003, non-consensually, and while I was drugged while sleeping in my own bed in the privacy of my own home, would be damaged if I decided to wear magnetic insoles which are freely available to purchase online. Now, when I say drugged in my own bed, you can actually drug somebody by wavelengths, by directed energy weapons. You can make them feel tired and drugged, as far as I am aware. It doesn't have to be an actual drug. I was once informed by voices coming directly from the center of my cranium that when targeted individuals use any digital media that has a screen near their heads or bodies, the plasma coming off the screen is coagulated with the energy field of the targeted individual. A targeted individual's biofield can be read anytime they use their computer. This tells the neuroscientific operator about 20 different pieces of information about the targeted individual. For example, their current state of mind, their current mood, including all sensations they are feeling throughout their body at that time. I once heard a voice coming from inside my head comment to another voice coming from inside my head and saying the following: "It is de rigueur that this forced two-way communication and control protocol is regulated to include everybody." Self-sufficiency within each European country is being strongly discouraged by the European Union. Each country in Europe is being financially supported to focus on only a few key industries. Eventually, the would-be enslavers hope to engender a situation where each country throughout the world focuses totally on producing a key number of products, and each country would totally rely on the worldwide central point of distribution of goods to distribute all products that a country might need. If a country refuses to comply with any of the dictates of the by-then fascist dictators, the fascist dictators would refuse to allow that dissenting country to receive the goods they need in order to live. In this way, the would-be dictators would have rigid control over all countries. This central point of control of goods inwards is already in place throughout Europe. If we allow this planetary-wide control system to continue, all people other than the control group will be put on an artificial intelligence-controlled human guidance system similarly to the manually controlled human guidance system I was trialed on for a number of years. On one occasion in the past, the voices coming from inside my head informed me that the Office of Public Works in Ireland would soon be taken out of the complete control of the Irish people, and all further decisions concerning the activities of the Office of Public Works inside of Ireland would be made by people outside of Ireland at a central location within the European Union. We would then be obliged to place an order with people within the European Union, in the European Parliament, if we wish to have something done within the island of Ireland. We must officially decide to abdicate from both the European Union and European Parliament forthwith. However, the Irish government appeared to be unwilling to investigate this issue. The Irish government must have been led to believe something that the rest of the population are as yet largely unaware of. Perhaps we are not allowed to leave the European Parliament if we owe them money. I don't know. I have no way of knowing. The voices coming from inside my head once informed me that whenever I eat something, their staff take an energy signature of whatever food is in my gut. They can only do this if I eat food that contain tracers. Some processed food contains tracers, and some brands of coffee contain tracers, and some aerosols contain tracers. Therefore, they can analyze the contents of your gut. They can also analyze your airways. They further said that by the use of this energy signature, they can tell if the food I have eaten is fresh or rancid, and also if the food just eaten by me contained sugar or salt, in combination with much more information as yet to be explained. Sometimes in the past, when I was lying on my bed and when the directed energy weapons operatives were in the process of taking the energy signature of the food I had eaten earlier, they would project such strong energy signals into the internals of my body that my whole body would rock to and fro in the bed. This is most certainly not my imagination, because I would see myself rocking while I felt the pulses of energy inside my stomach area, and while I was hearing the operatives discussing their findings concerning what I had just eaten. I have recently heard that in the past few months, millions and millions of Americans have purchased guns, more so than usual. This is excellent news in my opinion. The would-be central control and enslavement system will no doubt be totally and completely dismantled soon, and we will soon be going back to governing ourselves without any outside interference from anybody. The voices coming from inside my head once informed me that it is a very simple matter to find the location of the users of directed energy weapons on any map by the simple use of radar. They further informed me that the people who are targeting me, meaning themselves, can easily be located by anybody with a basic knowledge of the use of radar technology. Any university-educated radar technologist could achieve this in a matter of days. It is my own opinion that the vast majority of human beings on this planet do not wish to live under this mass control system. We must dismantle it immediately. On one occasion in the past, one of the voices coming from inside my head was heard to say by me, "Scientists from different divisions of the scientific community are raping all of the systems of knowledge within the body and mind of this woman, known as Gretta Fahey. But from now on, she is. But then I put in brackets, from now on, I'm known as Gretta of the family Fahey, which protects me from all man-made laws, which are out of harmony with moral law, and some of them are unjust. She no longer has any worthwhile quality of life because of constant questioning of her with voice transmitting technology both day and night at every waking moment, and by many other means. The voices which I heard coming from inside my head once informed me that many thousands of people throughout the European Union belong to the club which is frequently known as the self-proclaimed elite. They're the cabal. They further inform me that many of these self-proclaimed elite who are knowledgeable in the area of irritable bowel syndrome and other areas of mainstream medicine and psychiatry received all available information which was gleaned from the non-consensual long-term research which was carried out on my mind and body over many years. And they were also informed that a scientific inquiry had taken place on my mind and body over a number of years, but they were not informed that the scientific inquiry was non-consensual. They were not informed of that. They might have thought it was consensual. And they were not informed that it involved reading all of my thoughts in real time and forcing their replies back inside my head constantly, both day and night, every waking moment, among other doings. From doing my own research over many years, I now believe that the people behind the voices are doing their utmost to collapse the capitalist system so that they can bring in a socialist system throughout the world. To that end, there is a socialist theme to all levels of education in school systems throughout the world at the moment. The goal of the self-proclaimed elite is to submerge the individual into groupthink. Lone individuals acting alone are always portrayed as suspect. It is far easier to enslave a collective of like-minded people than unique free-thinking individuals. The self-proclaimed elite are also called by many other names. Some call them the establishment, the oligarchy, the deep state, among many other names. The only people who call them the elite are people who are paid to call them the elite. The self-proclaimed elite have the same genetic material as the rest of us. We are all equals on this planet of equals where human beings have lived for up to 500 million years, according to both historians of ancient history and archaeologists. The reason the self-proclaimed elite have created a false reality construct, which has been condensed down to a small and manageable time frame, like 6,000 years or something, is because human enslavement has always been entirely about mind control rather than body control. In an effort to create this condensed time frame, the self-proclaimed elite have falsified history, they have falsified archaeology, they have falsified anthropology and science and many other subjects. They have hidden major advancements in technology from the public eye. All organized religions down through the ages have been created for reasons of mind control and for reasons of separating us from our ability to think rationally and logically, and they have no basis in reality. Lots of people will disagree with me, but I have become an agnostic, and I have written a lot about, I've written a blog called A Rational Evaluation of Organized Religion in my website, which is called targetedindividualsireland.net, and I have abdicated from the Catholic Church. Human beings tend to maintain the status quo if they believe that there is a religious basis for their servitude. Okay. I was once on a vegetarian diet for a long time, and I suddenly decided to eat some non-vegetarian food because I was reading contradictory information regarding vegetarianism at that exact time. I immediately heard a female voice coming from directly inside my head repeat the following sentence a few times. Why is this woman allowed to eat unprescribed food? I have lost a ton of research. I then heard another female voice coming coming directly from inside my head, reply, "We must keep the subjects in the dark as to what is happening. You may not be vocal in front of them." I further heard this reply, "I will say what I like in this workplace." So they were having a bit of a row inside my head. Any ordinary good living people can become targeted individuals. After becoming a targeted individual during the course of many years, their personalities would be profiled to the point of extreme detail. When this has been achieved, it is an easy matter to program them via any type of smart screen to commit acts of extreme evil. I don't have any smart technology in my home. I don't have a television. I don't use any smart engineer technology at all whatsoever. And I don't come across it during my day at all because I live out in a rural area out in the country on a farm. So there's no smart engineer technology around me at all. So nobody could possibly program me. Whenever a human being becomes a targeted individual, their personal digital media screens are tailored to resonate with the infrastructure inside their bodies, also known as smart dust, which is put there by the food they eat. I don't know if this is true or not. This smart dust coagulates over time inside the human body to form stronger units. The personal digital media, example television, personal computer, both smart and dumb phones, as long as they contain a screen, can be used to take readings from this internal infrastructure, provided the human subject is in the environment of their personal digital media for a period of at least 5 minutes. The longer you use any of your personal digital media devices, the more information the unknown operatives can obtain about your body and brain and your thinking patterns. Over many months, the unknown operatives build up an extremely detailed personality profile of the unwitting human subject, which is intrinsic to the whole programming of the individual. However, people who don't watch television much or who don't have smartphones, they leave them alone. There's no point in targeting them. On one occasion in the past, the voices coming from inside my head, which were put there by the aid of advanced technology, informed me that each time I switch off my whole house electricity supply at the switchboard in the hall of my family home for a few minutes each day, that this act alone sets the neuroscientists who are conducting the illegal non-consensual experimentation on me, sets them back a considerable degree to the extent that their computer programs are sent into disarray. They implied that a constant, uninterrupted supply of electricity is needed in order to enable them to conduct their experiments on targeted individuals throughout the wider world. The internal voices which I hear coming directly from inside my head once informed me that tracers are being put into certain products that we internalize within our bodies and brains. They further informed me that tracers are regularly added to some brands of coffee and tea and similar products, so that neuroscientists working from a distance with the aid of directed energy weapons can easily inspect the insides of our bodies. They further informed me that tracers are also being put into aerosol deodorants so that these neuroscientists can easily inspect our air passages. Other products that contain tracers are crisps, which are known as, I think, potato chips in America, and some ice creams, especially cones. Chemtrail aerosol spray contains a special type of tracer that allows neuroscientists and others to manipulate our brains in various ways. The internal voices emphasized that chemtrail spraying is intrinsic to the creation of voices coming from inside the heads of individuals. On one occasion in the past, the internal voices coming from inside my head informed me that I had been using too much electricity and they would limit my supply of electricity in the future. Shortly afterwards, my nighttime electricity supply suddenly stopped working. I just want to see if there's anything else I forgot to say. All right. What happens when you are first targeted with directed energy weapons? You will be gang stalked by professional paid gang stalkers who don't even know you for a number of weeks or months in order to get you to appear crazy and stressed, so that they will sabotage your belongings in small ways so that it's unnoticeable to the rest of your family. But they will constantly gang stalk you for a few months in order to get you locked in a psychiatric hospital so that you will get a diagnosis of mental illness, some kind of mental illness, paranoid schizophrenia or something, so that you will lose all your credibility in the future. And no matter what you say after that, nobody will ever believe you ever again. So this is standard. This is a standard technique. If you're going to be put on a program of experimentation, you will be gang stalked for a few months initially. I was gang stalked for a few months initially. And from there on in, the police have no authority over you because they're obliged to send you to see a psychiatrist if you ever go into the police to complain about being gang stalked or being harassed by voices. Then they're obliged to send you to see a psychiatrist because they have no authority over you. They think you're a paranoid schizophrenic or something, because that might be down on your records. I don't know the ins and outs of the legalities of it, but perhaps that is the situation. I don't know if it's true or not. Okay, I think between my other YouTube video and this one, I think I have told most of what the voices inside have said to me on and off over a 14-year period when I was being targeted with directed energy weapons. I hope you find this helpful, and don't worry about it. If you're being targeted, please don't worry about it, because once it is exposed to the public, politicians will stop it happening. Thank you. Thank you for listening.